Welcome back, folks, to the Mel Wright Show. This is episode 260. We've got a great guest. We've got Sean O'Toole with us from PropertyRadar. He's going to tell us all about PropertyRadar and why you should care. It's a fantastic service and product. And we're just going to have a feast about, he's got extensive experience about technology in the real estate industry. It's going to, I feel, going to be a great show. We had some slight technical problems, or I did, so we're recording this a bit later. I had the phone on the Friday rather than on the Thursday. But everything works out, doesn't it? So, Shane, do you want to introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Sure. Sean O'Toole, and founder and CEO of PropertyRadar.com, and happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
That's great. And I've got my great co-host, Robert. Robert, would you like to introduce yourself to the new listeners and viewers?
Certainly. My name is Robert Newman. I'm a 13-year veteran of the real estate marketing industry. Part of what I do is I teach and train agents on how to use digital. I do all that for free on my blog, inboundrem.com. So you can go, and that's the word inbound, robertedwardmichael.com. If you want to learn how to do digital marketing, go there.
That's great. And I'm the founder of Mel Wright. We rely on Facebook to get you quality seller and buyer leads. We combine it with a suite of tools that keeps you in contact with these possible leads and convert them into commission checks. So if that sounds interesting, go over to Mel Wright, book a free demo with me, and I'll show you the power of Mel Wright. So, Shane, tell us more about PropertyRadar. You know, what does it do? How long you've been running it, and why did you start the business?
Yeah, well, we'll take those, maybe if I can take those a little bit out of order. I was a tech guy in Silicon Valley and had 3 startups there. And after the dot-com crash, up flipping houses and commercial property and industrial property and all kinds of stuff, over 160 transactions. And at the end of 2005, got nervous about the market, but was tracking every foreclosure in California and started to see a real increase in the number of foreclosures. And we launched a product called ForeclosureRadar in May of 2007. That was really, kind of the right place at the right time. Actually, at that point, it was still a little early. Like realtors would look at us and roll their eyes and go, "There's no foreclosures." And I go, "Come here, type your zip code in." And then they go, that can't be right? Like nobody realized yet when we first launched. But by early 2008, I was 60 Minutes, talking about the foreclosure crisis. So at that point, it was pretty obvious to everybody. And we had quite a run there. Billions and billions of dollars of properties bought using our platform. And around 2012, saw the end of the foreclosure market coming, and we launched PropertyRadar. So basically expanded the service that we had for foreclosures to all properties. It's kind of a property information service. And in about 2014, we realized that a lot of our customers were actually using us to build marketing audiences. So audiences of home and property owners, residential and commercial, that they wanted to market to, try to buy their house from in the case of real estate investors, get listings from for realtors, solar companies, roofers, et cetera, all looking. And so we've really focused on that and have this amazing list builder, and we leverage public records basically to help people with their marketing.
All right. Over to you, Robert.
So I want to dive a little deeper into that, like because we talked yesterday. So for those that don't know, John had some technology issues, and then we didn't get the show off and going. But Sean and I were on the phone having a conversation, and I got a chance to know a little bit about him, and I kind of queued him up for these types of questions, like a little deeper on how you would use the tool, why has he done this 3 different times, like a little bit about him, like about his background and why he's doing yet another tech company. Because trust me when I tell you, you kind of gotta like doing it. It's not just about the money, because I've started a couple myself, and you gotta have something else that drives you. And so is John. You're probably more successful than both of us in terms of selling your companies and all that stuff, Sean, but that doesn't change the drive to do it like one way or the other. So having said all that, queued that up that right way. So talk to me a little bit, because I know how I'd leverage PropertyRadar. Like, I'd build an audience. I know exactly what you're talking about, but I don't think that our listeners necessarily do. So I'm a real estate agent or broker. How am I going to use your tool to build an audience? Give us an example, like a specific example, maybe one that you know of, like a client that you've got that did it X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Don't reveal any of their secret sauce, but in general.
I'll talk about it in general, and then I'll give some examples. So in general, right, most realtors have done farming, right? Geographic farm. You call your title company and say, hey, I'm the address of everybody in this subdivision, right? So at a simple level, that's leveraging public records, right? Which the title companies, all your title history, your title insurance, that's all based on public records data. So they go out and grab those public records and they hand you this list. So we do that, but we just take it a couple steps further because there's a lot of data in public records, right? And a lot of information. So you can say, hey, as a realtor, I'm going to focus on this subdivision, right? And sure, do that geographic farm of that whole subdivision. But not everybody in that subdivision is the same. Some people have lived there for a few months. Some people have lived there most of their life, right? Some have a lot of equity in their homes. Some, have a large mortgage, maybe even are underwater. Some have kids, some are retirees, right? So one of the things that we do is we help realtors break down that market into separate lists, right? So to segment their geographic farm into these more specific farms. And why do that? So that you can have a better marketing message, so that you can differentiate yourself from the competition, right? People today see so many messages that if those messages don't relate and attract them specifically, it's not going to land, right? And, when I first started, the first time I kind of used direct mail, right? The golden rule is you had to send direct mail 3 times.
Right.
And now they're saying, at least, right? But now they're saying that in order to get a deal done, you have to make more on the order of 25 impressions, right? And that's a lot. And so the other side, besides making this list, is how do you do that, right? So you need to leverage Facebook and online ads. You need to also do direct mail, also phone call, also maybe voicemail drop. And how do you get enough impressions to actually get a deal done, to get that homeowner to think of you instead of just going to Zillow and you relying on Zillow for your business? And that's really what we do for realtors at the end of the day. I think a lot like what Jonathan does, right? Help build that direct connection with consumers in their market, and better messaging so that you can stand out.
I gotcha. So at the heart of it, if you were a marketer and you wanted targeted information, the way that I'm hearing you, I'm not sure that you feel this way, but the way that I'm hearing you is that your service would be aimed at that particular person. Because if I want a general audience information, I can still probably get some of that off Facebook. But if I want to start talking about who's got X amount of value inside their home, inside a specific subdivision, that's definitely not something I can find on Facebook. And I could, if I'm understanding you correctly, I could find that on PropertyRadar. Am I top level right? Top level wrong?
Top level right. And then all kinds of other things too, right? So besides that geographic farming, which is kind of the long-term thing, there's also the short-term leads of like people who need to sell. So people that are in foreclosure, houses that are vacant, right? Absentee owners, like all these kind of specialty lists of people that are more likely to sell right now. That you would go after for listings. But absolutely right. Rather than just this general targeting of a large area, get very specific in your targeting.
Right. So guys, for those of you who are listening and those who don't know, I'm gonna give you 3 separate tips right now around this tool, because that's kind of what I do. Like, I try to make the stuff that we talk about on the show actionable to a person trying to market for real estate. That's the only reason that John has me on the show, other he wouldn't deal with my ass otherwise. So
That's not true.
Here's some three ideas. So number one, you could build an audience using Facebook marketing. Okay, that's John's bailiwick than mine. But once you have that super targeted information, not only could you drop them direct mail if you wanted to, you could then drop them. You could have an advertisement that follows them around on Facebook using something called remarketing. So now you've got two levels of marketing to the same hyper targeted audience. And if you've listened to a single show that Jonathan and I do, we'll tell you the same thing over and over again. Leverage video to that same highly focused, hyper-targeted audience. Leverage that on Facebook. So now they have a video of you following them around, talking about whatever your offer is to that specific subdivision or that specific person. If you're an investor, you'd use this to find somebody that might be close to selling.
Yeah, what's that amazing figure around that? Still amazes me that the majority, when somebody's used an agent, they don't use the same agent again, do they?
80%.
Still amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about that follow-up, right? And so creating that customer list and continuing to follow them around and show them ads, even though you've already done a deal, is, it's pretty inexpensive, right? Like, and that's another, great use. And there, one of the interesting things too about, public records is, so even take something like your current list of customers, right? You can kind of watch your current customers or your past customers, let's say, in the case of realtors, right? And watch them for life events, right? Like, oh, they had, they've now got kids that are getting to be high school age. Oh, they've got these other things happening in their life. Maybe they just took out a loan. Maybe even they bought a second home or something like that. You can see these life event things going on, right? And know, oh, this is a good time to reach back out to them and restart a conversation. So there's a lot of ways. I mean, definitely public records for creating an audience is one of our primary use cases, but there's lots of, also doing due diligence on deals, monitoring, the properties you're interested in, going and finding off-market properties for a client that has maybe particular needs. So lots of ways to leverage that for sure.
Yeah, this would be so, again, for the audience, and we don't necessarily cater to this audience, but I know that we have them that listen to the show occasionally, because some of my original followers are all hyper luxury. And so for that market, guys, for those of you who even know what this term is in Southern California, the Beverly Hills Flats, which most people don't even understand what that is, but it references a very small basin inside the Beverly Hills area. These homes don't come up often at all. Oftentimes homes and properties in Beverly Hills, you're talking maybe 50 to 75 transactions a year. It is a remarkably small place that gets a lot of attention. In something like this, PropertyRadar would be an absolute go-to tool if I was understanding that I wanted to know who's holding on to those properties, how long have they been holding on to them. I don't know what the marketing message would be because I don't know what the specific circumstances are, but I do know that the first step to creating a marketing message is having the information. And if you do have a market where it's worth your time to really granularly look at it and say, I want to talk to each person about ready to list before they list, which is absolutely worth it here, like in Beverly Hills, absolutely, then you would definitely want to use a tool like this. Maybe combined, you could also use as a redundancy tool, another tool called Spokio, but either way, you'd want to get as much data as was publicly available for which you could leverage this, and then hyper-focus that audience. The second tip, guys, because I only got one out before John jumped in, is the second tip is you want to use Robly. So if any of you decide that you're going to leverage email, Robly does in many ways. It's a brilliant email marketing system that does AI-generated sending so that you are literally sending your message at the exact time the person you're sending to typically opens their email. Okay, they are really, really, really good at getting open rates. They've doubled or tripled my own open rate So I've used them and proven that they work. So Robly, R-O-B-L-Y, for those of you who still send email out, if you do create a hyper-targeted list like we're talking about right now, the next task that you have is getting in front of that list. Now, Facebook is certainly a good way to go. I personally am a bigger fan of email. I still think it's very effective. And so you could also leverage email, is what I'm saying, using PropertyRadar. So Sean,
I think it's, it's all good. Like, like I think Facebook's super important. I think email's super important, but direct mail still works too. Like people, even if they only pick that up and take it from their mailbox to their trash can, that's probably a longer impression than you get most other places on the way to the trash can, right? So it's, but they're all good, right? Like, and I think the really interesting thing to do today is to combine them, right? Yeah. Like, and tools like Jonathan has for Facebook, are great. And you combine that, like, I think that's really the interesting thing.
I totally agree with you. We're going to go for our break. We'll be back in a few moments. We're going to have a feast about technology and getting quality leads using technology. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. It's been a great discussion so far. So, can you give maybe Shane, are there any of your users that come to mind recently that have got some great results using your platform that you can share with us?
Yeah. Well, one example that's not a great result, but it still shows the power of public records, right? So I have a friend who was going after commercial real estate in the North Tahoe region, and was really putting together a lot of pieces, office, like marketing materials, all of this stuff, and there's basically 2 other commercial folks, and he really felt like he could do a better job than either of them, and was making a big investment there. And I said, well, what's the potential market here? And so we went and we just used public records to go say, how many commercial transactions happen a year here, right? What's the total transaction volume, right? So that figures out your total potential commissions, right?
Right.
And he's like, oh my gosh, even if I got like 50% market share, I can't make a living. Right? And one of the things that really is interesting to me is how many realtors go, oh, I'm the subdivision specialist, right? I'm the specialist in this area. And they don't know what the total transaction volume is in that area, right? I'm going to be the horse property specialist. That can be awesome if you have a unique position to bring to that market, and there's a lot of horse properties. But if there's 100 horse properties and 2 sell a year, you're starving, right? So that's one I thought was particularly interesting. Another one that we had, and this is one I talk about all the time, and I got a call the other day from one of our customers. And so you're driving down the street, right, with clients in the car on your way to a listing, and they see a house and they go, oh my gosh, if that house was available for sale, I would buy it today. Like, I love that house, right? And the realtor goes, yeah, it's not listed, sorry. And they keep driving to their listing, right?
Right.
What if you pulled over right there, brought up your phone, you clicked on the house, there was the owner's phone number, you click on the phone number, and you say, hi, Jill, I'm a realtor. I'm just happened to be driving by, and my client is super interested in your house. And I just wanted to make sure you weren't planning to sell anytime soon, right?
Right.
Because what always happens, right, is it's not listed. You drive on, the person buys the house 5 doors down, and then 3 weeks later, that house is listed for sale, and they're kicking themselves, right? There's no reason for that to happen. Like, right while you're out front, click, talk to the owner, find out what's going on, right? And so we had a client, I've been saying this for years, and like, sometimes you wonder if anybody listens, right? And so I had a client the other day, and they said, I just closed a $2.3 million deal because I stopped and called. And not only did I talk to the person, but they were in the house. They showed us the house right then, and we kind of negotiated and got the deal done. Like,
wow,
driving down the street.
I think that's a brilliant use for Property Radar. Like, I think that for those of you listening, like, this is the kind of service, and there's a few of them out there that you would keep in your phone or keep bookmarked somehow. For a lot of people, if we're honest about it, most of the people that listen to the show, John and I are trying to coach them into being great marketers. But if we start saying, hey, do proper market research on your area and find out what the total audience and the total transactions are, we right now at that moment have lost 80% of the people that are on the journey with us, because there's so much, they feel like that is such a big idea that they don't tackle it. So, but to say there's a way that you can get a deal if you just have this app or URL in your phone, and you're driving along and somebody says, I wonder if that property is available, or if I wonder if we can get the phone number for the person who owns the property, even though you're just driving by a house and an address. Yeah, that's an excellent use for the service. And yes, there's a cost that goes along with it. And do you mind if I share what the cost is, Sean?
No, that's fine.
The standard, there's a monthly for $59 a month and $79 a month. Is there a way for, like, if somebody was driving around and they were going to sign up just to get a phone number for a particular property, what would the cost of that be?
So right now we only have the subscription service. So there are services like you mentioned, like Spokio and others that kind of do the one-off thing. We are like a larger platform that has a lot of different functionality, and so we don't offer that one-off service. And we're not a consumer service, right? Like we have it's mostly public record data, right? We do enhance it with phones and emails and some other stuff, but it's not something we want to put into everybody's hands, right? This is for professionals. This is for people that are in the business who have a legitimate use, right?
I got you.
Be respectful of people's privacy, right? Nobody wants to feel targeted, right? Like, so targeting is the best thing ever for marketers, right? Because it allows me to get the right message to the right people. And in that sense, as a consumer, right, I want to be spoken to. I want to be heard. I want to have a message that meets my needs. Mm-hmm. But I also don't want to hear that you targeted me, right? Like, so that there's a nuanced thing there where for marketers, targeting's really good, but it's like, it's this powerful tool that you have to be very, very careful about how you use.
In some ways, it's a bit like dating, isn't it? Right. Most people, they probably ask their friend at work, is Kathy single or is she in a lot? But if you told Kathy that you've been asking questions about her and trying to suss out your possibilities with Kathy, that isn't really going to go down that well, is it?
It's going to creep her out. Yeah.
It's going to creep her out, isn't it? So it's the same with the consumer, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think consumers are getting really tired of people, targeting them, in these kind of evil, et cetera ways, right? Like, so we're always telling our folks, like, look, we sell to local businesses to help you better serve your local market. And if you do that spirit, nobody's going to have a hard time with the fact that, okay, out of the 50,000 people in your market, you were more efficient and sent to these 2,000 who are most likely to buy your, they're not going to begrudge you trying to run an efficient business, so long as you're not nasty about it, right? And you do it in a good way.
So can we get back and clarify the costing? So am I correct in what Robert just said? You got two kind of levels, $50 a month and $70. Is that correct? And what's the difference between that you get in those two levels?
Yeah, they're really kind of designed for different folks, right? For most folks that are marketers, you're going to want the $80 a month package. And in the $60 a month, we do have a lot of folks that still use this for like property research, like how many sales happened, how many foreclosures happened. They're doing more research. They don't need phone numbers. They don't need email addresses. They're not building audience lists. That's what that less expensive package is for. So just figure it's $80.
Right, for the whole thing. Well, that's fantastic. So what's been your experience? What kind of agents have been signing up to use the full package? And where do you think the sweet spot? Because that's something else me and Robert talk about. Me and Robert have two separate companies, but I feel we're targeted, there is overlap, but we're targeted at two different, and I have people like yourself come on the show and they've got services, products, but I try and point out that it's a big market and there's different services aimed at different type of agents or brokers. So what do you see as the sweet point of the kind of agent broker that you're trying to attract?
I think the big difference, right, is you have the data-driven folks and the relationship-driven folks. And most real estate folks are relationship-driven, right? Now, that's been forced a little bit and changed a little bit with COVID, where, the social networking events that you used to do to go get new clients, right, have kind of stopped, right? And at the same time, like I know in our local area, we've got way more buyers than we have sellers. So you start to have to be a little bit more data driven right now, where you can't go out and find those connections and find those listings in the same way, because the social, fabric's kind of broken down here. But more data driven folks. And then the other thing is that, listen, it's overwhelming how many different, it's just SEO, Facebook, right? Public records. There's three of us right here with and they're all good things and things that everybody should be doing, right? But it's overwhelming. And so we really kind of don't even target the individual realtor and basically say, teams, public records, and this kind of programmatic farming. If you're a team and you've got to feed a whole team and you need that, 10, 20, 50, hundreds of deals a year, this has to be part of your mix, right? And a team usually has a dedicated person that's focused on marketing, that's focused on, can focus on list building, can focus on those things. So most of our customers are teams or are, high volume, probably 20 deals plus a year that they're doing, where they're really leveraging this. Unfortunately, with realtors, it's kind of squirrel, right? They go, oh, you got to be doing social media. Oh, you got to be doing video. Oh, you got to be doing SEO. Oh, you got to be doing, and they jump in and they do it for like a couple of weeks, but not long enough for it to actually have results. And then they go, oh, this isn't working. And the next squirrel, right, gets them and they go off in this next direction. And they never do anything consistent enough, long enough to really get the results. And, so I think it's still valuable for those folks if they would stick to it. But, this is something you need to do day in, day out for.
You gotta have a plan of action.
Same thing's true of Facebook and SEO and the rest.
You gotta have a plan of action and a consistent, usage of it. I think we come to the end of the podcast part of the show. Hopefully, Shane, you can stay on for another 10, 15 minutes. And I'd like to discuss with you how you see the real estate industry in the next year, 18 months, and in technology, because you've got a lot of experience around technology. And so we're going to wrap up the podcast part of the show. The bonus content that we're going to have, folks, you can see and listen to that on the MailRight YouTube channel with the whole interview plus the bonus content. So all you have to do is basically go to YouTube, put in MailRight, and you'll see the channel and subscribe to it, and you'll be able to listen to the bonus content. So Shane, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and your company and what you're up to?
PropertyRadar.com is where we're at. And both the company and myself are on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. And my email is Sean@PropertyRadar.com. Super easy, SEAN. And yeah, happy to connect with anyone.
That's great. And Robert, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and what you're up to?
Guys, please go to inboundrem.com. I work so hard on that site. Right now, I'm working on a post that ranks the top 12 real estate lead generation companies in order of proficiency. In other words, if you want to use PPC, who's best? If you want to use Facebook, who's best? I've decided to do this huge, it's going to be 6,000 words. But what I just produced is a how to do a digital marketing plan. And that is equally an impressive piece of content that me and my entire team worked on. And it has got an hour-long tutorial along with 4,000 or 5,000 words that explain item by item how you might go around working a digital marketing plan, which, by the way, I'm working that in on purpose, guys, because as part of that digital marketing plan, you might very well back up and use PropertyRadar to identify a good persona inside a hyper-local targeted area. That's
well, I do hope you're mentioning Melrite as well, but we never know, do we? You might be doing us a favour. We'll see you next week, where hopefully it's going to be a great internal discussion between me and Robert, or we'll have another fabulous guest like Sean. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye. So on to bonus content. So, you've been involved in the technology sector for a while. You're involved in the real estate property. Is there any technologies or any other companies that come on your radar in the past, like 3-6 months, that really you thought that were really interesting that you like to share with our audience?
Yeah, great question. One in particular, that is pretty new. You've probably heard of Deluxe. If you've ever gotten checks printed, you've probably heard of Deluxe. They're the big check printing company. So they have a subsidiary called Print Genie. And what's really cool about Print Genie, and there's a couple other companies like Lob, but typically if you wanted to do direct mail, right, you need to do it to 500 people, 200 people, and you put together this list, you put together your postcard, and it goes out to this big group, right? What Print Genie does is they still do that, but they've got this new thing that's triggered postcards. So let's say somebody new moves into an area, or somebody goes into foreclosure, or somebody shows up to your website, right, and puts in their information. They can send a single postcard based on that triggered activity. And I think that's a really cool thing. And I've been looking for that service to pair with ours, because besides making these audience lists, right, we can also monitor those lists for new people that match. And when that happens, you'd like to send out a piece of marketing immediately. And I've been looking for this for years. Lob was probably the first, but Print Genie's cool because they've got a lot of experience in like the realtor, real estate investor, mortgage, real estate specific space. And so they have a lot of good templates and stuff, whereas Lob, you're kind of starting on your own.
Yeah, it's fantastic. What about on the virtual tour front? Any apps or any of the players in there that has come on your radar?
Particularly stand out. I focus a little bit more on the audience generation side and stuff, but the things that are happening with the cameras, Matterport, the stuff that they've done is really cool, right? To be able to, especially in COVID, to be able to walk through a house and kind of see it ahead of time. Like, I really don't know right now that you should be listing anything without, that kind of level of tools. Some of the new floor plan tools that are making it easier to quickly generate a floor plan just using your phone.
Yeah, I forgot the lady actually in the company.
I will make sure. And the service was Kubicasa.
Oh, thank you very much. It looked a really fantastic product, actually.
It's same team that makes Matterport. So actually,
same team. All right. So, that makes just a ton of sense to me, like in COVID and the rest, right? Like, it's so important to be letting people see it. You know, one of the big changes that's happening right now is the number of properties that are getting offers where where the person buying the house has never seen it. They're even closing escrow without ever having seen the house in person, just using these tools. And that's a big change.
Yeah, I personally would do that, but I understand why people are doing it.
I've done it.
I'm a great believer in technology, but I think there are some boundaries, which is great because that's why real estate agents, I feel professional ones that offer some value will have a future, because and that's why that's why technology hasn't replaced them so far, nor do I for the foreseeable future think that will happen. Which is great, because there wouldn't be a customer base for Mailrite if I didn't feel that way. Or for your own product, would there?
Right. No. And, I guess that's the big one to talk about is Open Door. But I just was going to say, having bought foreclosures at foreclosure auction, you don't get to go inside of any of those houses. So I've bought over 150 properties that I haven't seen the inside of and haven't even seen a picture of the inside of. And that is definitely a little nerve-wracking. And sometimes you're a little surprised at what you end up with. I will say, though, I've never bought a house for myself that way.
Right.
No, obviously, as a professional investor and property buyer, obviously I would expect your knowledge and your willingness to take risk to be on a slightly different level than the average retail buyer, really, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
So is there any other technology that you come across in the real estate industry that you thought, yeah, that's a great product and a great idea?
Well, I think, the one thing that everybody's talking about right now, because Open Door is going public through a SPAC, and, is that going to eliminate the realtor with these guys? And I look at Open Door, right? I was a investor and I go buy homes and I pay cash for them, right? Which is what Open Door is doing, right? They're just doing it at a different scale, but they're really a flipper. And it's interesting, like even in some of their prospectus, like they come out and they say, flippers are bad and we're good, right? And I'm like, you're a flipper, like get over it. Like you're a flipper. Like, what else are you? And, so maybe more consumer friendly, maybe not, whatever. But I think that one is super interesting. They've done a lot to tout like artificial intelligence and we can make better offers. And I'm calling bullshit, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I just think that's total marketing spin, isn't it?
Yeah, and we see so much of that right now about AI and ML. And I'm a data scientist and I understand those technologies deeply. And what people don't get is they don't fix GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, right? And at the end of the day, like, I'm a huge fan of public records. I built a whole business around public records. I've made a lot of money buying and selling properties using public records, right? So this tool that I built for myself and my own investing activities, right? So I'm a huge fan. However, right, like, there's all this useful information there, but there's not like, it doesn't tell me how the place feels. It doesn't tell me the curb appeal. It doesn't tell me the view. It doesn't tell me the floor plan, the livability, right? None of that's in public records. And none of that's really in any accessible data that you can grab and apply machine learning to say what this property's worth, right? Zillow's estimates are a huge controversy with realtors.
You're very diplomatic. I love your diplomacy here.
I won't be diplomatic. That's my role, is not to be diplomatic. Go ahead.
So, but I actually have a very different take, like on the Zillow's estimate, right? So here's the thing: based on public records, a Zillow's estimate in a subdivision of homes that are largely built around the same time, that are very similar in floor plan, that are very similar in quality, is going to be dead on accurate, right? It is going to be so good, it's unbelievable. Then you go out into another area where the homes are all of different ages, of different floor plans, of different quality, it's going to be garbage, right?
Mhm.
And I think if Zillow, they obviously, it's hard to say they made a mistake. They have a huge valuation. They have incredible market share, right? And all the rest. But imagine if Zillow, when they put out that Zestimate, said, hey, here's our Zestimate. And they just had a little less ego in it and said, but for a real valuation, call a realtor. And by the way, we'll connect you with one. They would have made more money selling leads to realtors, and realtors never would have been pissed off about Zestimates because they would have just a little less ego around it and said, this is our guess, but for the real thing, go to a realtor.
Yes,
I think they should still do that.
yeah. So, Brian, what's your views about the virtual brokerages? You know, they've entered the market. They seem to be very popular with a certain type of agent, maybe the more experienced agent, but they seem to be disrupting the market from the traditional established agent, the national brands. Do you think they will continue to grab market share, or do you think it's just been an attempt and they're different
Continue to buy market share?
Well, I was going to leave
in some cases, like a Compass.
That's why I'm asking the question, because you know, you got the franchise, which I think they've shaken a lot of the franchise agencies up quite a bit by their aggressive nature in entering the market. Do you think that will continue, or do you think that you got some concerns about their business models?
I had an agent friend who posted to Facebook, and they said it was last Christmas, so it was a little while ago, and they were at the annual meeting, and they got an end of the year bonus, right? And it was a pretty incredible bonus, and they're like, "This is the best company ever," and and they were just so excited, enthusiastic, right? And I didn't want to burst that bubble, but I'm like, okay, this is the best company ever at taking SoftBank's money and putting it in your pocket, right? With that bonus, because you didn't really earn that bonus, right? Like, no offense, but they're just paying you off here, right? And, and I think with what happened with WeWork and what's happening with SoftBank and the rest, I expect we're going to see a bit of a pullback in terms of that very aggressive, market share growth. This idea that, look, I'm a huge technology fan and the rest. But when you're buying market share like that, which makes sense, because when you own that market share in the long run and you can monetize it in the long run, that can be a very good return on investment. So I understand the mechanics of why you go about it this way, but that doesn't make it a good business model in the short run, right? And I don't think you're going to get too many of those. And I think that there's plenty of room still for the franchisees and different models. And I think, some people want that sense of ownership that comes with a franchise. Some people are going to want to hang their own shingle and do it all on their own, right? Some people are going to want to go
and then
hang out with the bright,
I
shiny
know
tech all day.
that we won't mention. I know the ones that I know who you are targeting your comments about, but there's another one that I've been involved with, Alison James, and it's a non-frill virtual brokerage, and it won't appeal to a lot. You have to have a certain amount of experience, and even though if you've got the experience, it still might not be your cup of tea. I know some of the other more established, got Office, more established brokerages. A lot of agents have come to me and they said they're just sick of being nickeled and dimed by their brokerage. A fee for everything, a fee for actually using the coffee machine, or a fee. Practically, they have invented a fee for everything. Do you think that also that's driven people to look at alternatives because a lot of agents feel they've been nickeled and dimed?
Oh, absolutely, right. And it comes down to, if as an agent, right? And I've been a broker for a long time, but you know, there's each person needs something different, right? Like you may care a lot about having the office downtown because you want a place to go, and there's other agents in there and you want a place to socialize, and that may be an important piece, right? You're working out of your car in your house. Why would you be pitching in to pay for those things? You should be with a brokerage that doesn't have those things, right? So I do think it's individual for each. And so I think we're going to see more models, and you know, and I hope we see more models, and there should be a fit for everybody. One of the things that I think is really a problem, and one of the models I would like to see, right? As a new agent, I come in and I've got a 50-50 split, let's say, right? Or maybe even I get 40, the brokerage gets 60, and I'm not really in a place to leverage it. Now, this really experienced agent, you know, maybe they got paid to come over to this other brokerage, right? And they got a bonus such that they're making more than 100%. You know, I've seen those deals happen, right? So you get these two ends of the spectrum. What I don't think I've seen a brokerage really think about is how do you help a person get from here to here, right? How do you invest in that person's business? Because if I've got a 50-50 split and half my money is going to the brokerage for marketing and stuff, that means I have that money to invest in growing my business, right? I'm growing the brokerage's business. And I would love to see a brokerage model come out that says, hey, you're new, and we're going to help you invest right early on, and then hand the reins more and more over to you, and your split will change, but your costs are also going to change because you're going to take more and more on, right? Like there's got to be some piece there, because it's very hard to go from 50-50 split. You're smart, you're hardworking, but you don't have cash to invest, right? You don't have cash to hire, you know, Sean and PropertyRadar, hire Robert, hire Jonathan. And you have to do those things to really grow a big business.
Oh, you don't know. Mailright's a very affordable product.
Okay, very well, yeah. Okay, so unfair there, right? but still, you know what? It's an investment.
Robert's the expensive one. I'm the cheap. I'm the cheap person.
All right, fair enough. But you want to invest in that marketing, and how do you invest that time and the expertise and the rest to build your business when you've got a brokerage taking half of every dollar coming in that you close?
Sure.
And there's an opportunity there just to tell a story about how we get you from a 50-50 split to Rockstar.
Well, I think we end the show there. Shane, you're going to have to come back later on in the beginning of the new year, whatever. Time goes quick. It's been a fascinating discussion. Thank you so much for being patient and dealing with my technical troubles yesterday. That's much appreciated. But I think we've offered some fantastic value during our discussion. And thank you so much for agreeing on coming on the show.
Yeah, Sean, I hope you come back. I love this last fun. 10 minutes where I heard your view. I just, I hope the audience really tuned in and paid attention. I know I was.
Right, we'll see you next week, folks, for another Mailright show. Bye.